So I have a question for Inês this week, which is how much electricity have you put through somebody else's body? Because this is what Andres asked me 2 weeks ago.
I do not know. How much is there in a lightning bolt?
Mm-hmm. Is it 88 gigawatts, isn't it? Isn't that what... If I've learned anything from movies, it's that a lightning bolt contains 88 gigawatts of electricity.
Very good.
Because I can't believe that Back to the Future would possibly lie to me. It must be correct.
Yeah. I guess for me, I'm confused because occasionally people die from being struck by lightning. Whereas in these films, it seems like you are reanimated. You're given life by lightning.
Yeah.
This whole kind of talk about immortality does make me worry that... for all that we may feel these are kind of ludicrous, non-scientific fantasies, there will probably be Silicon Valley tech bros who are watching these movies considering whether they're documentaries, because those guys seem like they will do anything to live forever.
It's actually rather timely, isn't it, when you think about AI and how much are these people trying to play God, So it's quite scary to think about it. And even though I was thinking how is this really fresh, his new take on it? And then when I look around and when you read the news, then you think, actually, it's rather timely. Yes, it is still.
Not one of these stories about creating eternal life has a good ending, does it?
Yeah.
Never, ever do they turn to the camera at the end of the movie and say, well, it all worked out great. I'm pleased we did these experiments.
I love it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Two Real Cinema Club. My name is Andres Lorente.
And I am James Rosica. Every episode on the Two Real Cinema Club, we watch two movies. We watch a new movie, and then we watch an old movie that it has something in common with. Sometimes the connection is tenuous. Sometimes it's pretty much the same film twice. I can't believe this is the second podcast in a row that we have covered films that largely involve conducting electricity through people's bodies. What the hell? It's for a while we were the leading donkey-based podcast. Mm-hmm. Then we became like the leading Nazi-based podcast, and now we are the conducting electricity through people's bodies podcast. Happily, this week, to temper us a little, we have a guest.
We do.
Hello.
We are best when we ride on three reels, and our favorite guest of all is coming to us today from Dubai. Inês Braga, welcome back to the pod.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be back. My favourite Sunday treat.
Won't believe what a relief it is to have someone with an actual brain on the show. Thank God for that.
As long as it's not an abnormal.
Such a good liar, James, but thank you.
And today we are talking about a couple of films with very similar names. We're watching a Young Frankenstein, which is actually the old Frankenstein, and then just a plain old Frankenstein, which is the new Frankenstein, the really young Frankenstein.
I've already started to worry, have I seen the correct films now? Oh, no.
There haven't been enough Frankensteins.
Yes, exactly. As if there haven't been enough Frankensteins already. So we are comparing the new release, I think it was... had a theatrical release, but not a long one. It was 2025, of course, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. And comparing it to Mel Brooks' 1974, I want to say.
Yes.
Young Frankenstein, which I think I saw in the theater when it came out. I was about 6 or 7 years old, but I have such strong memories of it that I'm convinced I was in the theater at that time. So we are comparing an old and a new film, as we always do.
Last year was Young Frankenstein's 50th anniversary.
Oh, that's right.
Oh.
Got a new release in the UK, I think.
Oh, okay. I saw a trailer. I watched this film, or Young Frankenstein. I watched it on DVD. And on the trailer or on the special features, there was a trailer from a revival, but I don't think it was 2024 because do they even make DVDs in 2024? I don't think so, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, so they must have had a revival at 25 years or something like that. But I did see a little featurette with some of the major players, and that was interesting. Which you don't get on Netflix. You don't get bonus features.
I think you do, actually.
Do you really?
You do.
Oh.
I think you do. Don't you have extras? I think you do have
I'm too much of a
features.
Luddite. I can't go that deep into the menus and get back out safely. So maybe they do.
See,
have
I'm
it.
trying, Randy. See, I'm trying to keep up with youngsters.
The only extras that I'm aware of on Netflix is at the very end of the movie when it comes up with "you may also like" and shows you pictures of 3 films you've already seen.
Exactly. Yeah. And not liked.
It's
Not liked.
It's so good when the algorithm fails, isn't it? It just gives you hope in humanity.
So 2025's Frankenstein. I'm guessing this is kind of one of Netflix's hopefuls for next year's Oscars, isn't it?
Probably.
I'm guessing for them this is a relatively prestige project. $120 million budget, I believe. My understanding is that Guillermo del Toro has been sort of entertaining the idea of doing a Frankenstein movie for like 20 years or more.
Yeah, probably.
Apparently, he was 11 when he said that he wanted to make that movie.
Ah. So it's taken him this long, and after all that preparation, this is what he comes up with? Oh, colour me disappointed. I have some reasonably strong opinions about this film, but I'm not sure that you two will share them. So before the slating commences, would you like to tell us the story of 2025's Frankenstein?
Yes and no for various reasons. Doesn't everyone know the story already? And I'm not really prepared. But yes, I will tell you a little bit. I'll lean on my other reels here, my reels in Dubai and reels in London in order to get through the synopsis, because I'm going to confess to the Two Reel Cinema Club family, I summarized the wrong film, so I'm a little less prepared. But I think we've got so much great background knowledge from all the Frankensteins that have ever been recreated. Boy, there are a lot of them out there, aren't there? So
There are a lot.
So I'll rely on that. But yes, I will tell you a story. You can start that music whenever you want to. 2025's Frankenstein by Guillermo del Toro. Also written, I think he's the only screenwriter credit on there, but I think he gives credit to Mary Shelley, I guess. So she gets a little nod for writing a very small, unpopular book called The Modern Prometheus, or Frankenstein, or vice versa. We open in the Arctic, where Dr. Frankenstein is running towards this sort of ice-locked ship, and he's being chased by this vicious monster who, by some accounts, might be a bit too big, too strong, too mean for the typical Frankenstein lover, but he is being chased to his death by his own creation. Dr. Frankenstein takes shelter with the captain of the boat in his cabin and begins to relay the story of the monster and his own life in great detail. We are taken through the story with basically narration of the lives of both the creator and the creation, the monster Frankenstein. We see pretty good exposition on the makings of Dr. Frankenstein. He's before a group of judges who are analyzing his reanimation of like part of a human being. There's no bottom part. It's mostly just exposed body cavity and heart, and then a skull that has an open brain, and he's using electricity. There's a lot of electricity in films recently, as James mentioned earlier, in order to reanimate basically a corpse, which is kind of controversial, as one might expect. When Christoph Waltz's character comes and sees the lecture and approaches Dr. Frankenstein about giving him a castle where he can do whatever he wants, I was unclear of the location. I think originally they go to Edinburgh, but where is the castle? In Austria, or is it in Edinburgh?
I think it's supposed to be like
Edinburgh.
far-flung Scotland.
Yeah, Scotland.
I think.
Yeah. Which I always thought of it as being an Austrian thing. Was it a Scottish thing? The Frankenstein.
I did read the book this week, and I will come back and point out some of the few elements that the book and the film have in common. In the book, I think Dr. Frankenstein does contemplate making a companion for the monster in Scotland.
Yeah.
So he does set up a lab and gets halfway through the job. So that I think is the Scotland
sort
connection.
of a conflation of locations there. Yes. Okay.
I think so.
The brother goes back to Austria, I think. Then eventually Victor joins him in Austria, and I think the creature chases him all the way there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I gather. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we end up having is, I think there's wonderful corpse collection to gather the parts for what's going to happen. They're going to create a monster somewhat in his own image. And then all hell will break loose, because while Victor is a very good creator, he's not a very good nurturer of life. And he and the monster sort of come to odds. Ultimately, the story also includes a sort of a maturation of the monster. All of a sudden, he becomes quite friendly and enters the cabin boat where Victor is dying and telling his story to the captain. And then he gets to tell his story from his point of view. So we do get the story from both the view of the doctor and the monster. And we understand why they are being... why are they chasing one another in the Arctic in super cold conditions, and who will come out of the experience alive? End of ad hoc synopsis number 1.
Very good. That's
Excellent.
good. I feel like I ought to ask: are both of those characters actually alive at all? But
Interesting.
You've just given us a completely different film. You're throwing a lot of surprises at me. That 1, I'm supposed to discuss this film with some sort of intelligence, and 2, it's not even the film that I saw. They're both dead. I see dead people. It's like the Sixth Sense Frankenstein or something.
Shyamalan's version.
No, don't give him ideas too.
Don't give him ideas. Oh no.
Did you not like the opening shot, James? I love the opening scene. What did you think of it?
So I think it is fine. We always talk about like opening and closing images, and so it does open with this big long shot of ice, and I'm presuming that he's trying to tell us, this is going to be a story about something which is both cold and deadly, which is sort of true. I wonder whether it also is suggesting that this is going to be a film without very much human warmth, which I think is also perhaps true.
Yeah.
We'll ring a spoiler bell in a minute, but I have a couple of non-spoilery comments. The first one of which I hinted at when I sent you both what we were texting earlier in the week, which is just I didn't really like this film. I just don't think it's very good. But I might be the only person who thinks that on this panel. What do you think, guys?
Are you a fan of Guillermo del Toro?
Well, I think he's done some good work, but I think he's had some big, heavy misses as well. Pacific Rim, I thought was pretty dreadful. Hellboy really didn't particularly like. A lot of his later films I have not caught up with. But Kronos, his first picture, love that film. Hits and misses.
Yeah, I haven't seen Kronos. I do need to see that. I'm a massive fan of Pan's Labyrinth, and then kind of lukewarm on basically the rest of the body of work. Super Eye. I mean, he's got a great sense of getting a lot of great shots or great looks into one frame. But I always wonder if like writers shouldn't be directors, or more select directors shouldn't be writers. I hate to say that. I just wonder. I mean, this is kind of a foolproof material. I think it's perfectly fine, and for Netflix film, I think it's great. I didn't have to go to the theater to see it. I probably wouldn't have gone to the theater to see it. But yeah, I'm kind of lukewarm. I think it's competent. It's super competent. It's also super long, and it makes some huge mistakes in terms of telling the story, I think, and that's where the issues lie for me.
Yeah.
I felt, again, I don't think this is as good as Kronos or Pan's Labyrinth. Those are my two favourite movies of his, but I didn't feel it was bad. I felt there was... it's still magical, it's quite... I think we should value more and more like directors that want to bring that magical cinematic quality and, and still focus on giving artisans work.
Right, yep,
in terms of the costume and the sets and the puppetry and the makeup. and there aren't that many like him anymore, that are not into CGI and really value the craft. And I think it's so nice to notice that in the film, and I really noticed that. And it was interesting as well, because I was discussing it with my students and they mentioned it, and I was really happy about that, and how it's resonating. And this, could start a whole conversation about remakes and, classics. But the one positive thing about a remake and reinventing a classic is that it opens up this discussion to a new audience, right, that wouldn't have seen the previous films. Like my students, for instance, the current generation now, that were drawn to it not only because it's Guillermo del Toro and his Frankenstein, but also because of Jacob Elordi, probably.
Right. Yep,
what I mean? And that. But I think overall, as a piece of filmmaking, I felt it was, again, as you said, Andres, I think it's very well accomplished. I don't think it's his finest work, and I think the writing lets it down. But overall, I was really compelled. I was really into it. Again, I felt it was too long. I agree with you, but I found it rather poignant and timely. And I don't know, perhaps I'm getting old and too nostalgic. It left me with a sense of, it's a lingering melancholy that just stayed with me for days. Again, this is signs of aging, but so you can blame me, something else. But I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's as good as James Whale's Frankenstein, and I think it winks at it, right?
Yeah, a lot.
There's definitely a lot of influence there, but I thought, for instance, Mia Goth is absolutely mesmerising, and I wish there was more of her.
Yeah.
And I think the performances are great. Christoph Waltz, and of course Oscar Isaac and Jacob Elordi. I think, he really is like the soul of the movie. And I didn't really know who the creature was, who was the actor behind it. And when I read, I was like, oh wow, okay, never expected that. Because I recently saw a series that he was in, The Narrow Road to the Deep End, I think, or something like that, about the anyway, like, it's a very harrowing series, but he was great in it, and I was surprised that he was the creature, and I felt like his performance was incredible. Even like Lars Mikkelsen, the guy that plays the captain, I really like him.
Oh, yeah.
He's he used to be in The Killing and Borgen, those Danish series. He's very, very good. And he's Mads Mikkelsen's older brother.
Yeah.
Right.
Remember Mads from Another Round? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I felt like overall the cast was fantastic, and the performances are great. Mm-hmm. And, overall, I felt it was a very well-accomplished film.
I'm starting to worry that I haven't seen the same film as you two, because I came away kind of feeling, we'll ring the spoiler bell in a minute, but like top of my list of notes here, I wrote, this film is all over the place, too much tell, don't show, too overwrought, too talky, too lumbering, too stagey, too melodramatic. That's what I wrote at the top of my page. That I felt...
Those are essentially my notes too, though, James. I mean, I had all the same,
I've
all
been
the same
copying
feelings.
as usual.
Yeah.
That I did enjoy Jacob Elordi's portrayal of the creature.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have a great deal to do, and a good sort of 70% of his performance is shouting the word Victor and pretending to be a 6'6" toddler. Good for him, but. I'm not sure that he's called upon to do a great deal. I mean, the scenes where he's not a 6'6" toddler, he's kind of being like the Hulk B team, throwing people around through furniture. I mean, even that very open, I will ring the spoiler bell in a minute, but even that very opening scene where he turns up and he rocks the boat about with his huge mega strength. Yeah. And it feels like, he's just being the Hulk, but but he's the Hulk who can't jump up a ladder, so they pull the ladder up, and that's it. He's completely defeated. And even once he finally does make it onto the ship, like, people politely line up to take shots at him or poke him with a spear. And then one of the people who pokes him with a spear, he picks up the spear. And like a fool, the man with the spear just holds on to the spear, allowing himself to be catapulted 50 feet away from them. I mean, I just don't understand. It all feels a little bit like outtakes from the Avengers.
Yeah.
And I didn't really feel like it necessarily quite belonged in this story, which meant that I end up feeling like I'm not really sure what the tone of this is. Is it an 18th century superhero story, or is it a kind of a melancholic gothic romance? Because it's trying to kind of be both, and I'm not completely sure that it's succeeding at either. But I'm sorry, I'm going to slagging the thing off, which feels very rude. And I agree that it's nice that costume design and makeup, and these people have got jobs, and the production design is great. It's gothic with a capital G. And very effective. Yes. Shall we ring the spoiler bell, thereby giving me liberty to slag off later parts of the film as well?
The ending.
Yeah.
Which I also agree. And I have to say, even though I felt, overall it was well accomplished, I agree with that. I think the writing lets it down. And the tone, I had a feeling, and I think, being a fan, how he is of Korean cinema, is just, he wasn't really sure if he was leaning into the horror or the melodrama. So he's set there like in between, there was some sort of horror elements, but then it was almost like his sentiment was too much in it and preventing him from seeing that clearly, and then just veering on to sort of his more personal side and clouding his judgment a little bit. And I felt that a bit in the tone. So I agree with you on that for sure.
I mean, Kronos does tread that line between sort of gothic and
absolutely
sort of
in a much
melodrama,
better way,
but does it successfully, doesn't it? So I think he can pull it off. I'll ring the bell. Here we go. I got it. Ship's bell this time. Here we go. Ringing out across the Arctic plain. Oh, very loud, very crisp. This film has an interesting structure insofar as I'm pretty sure it's not 3 acts. I think it's 5, isn't it? It's like a 5-act structure with bookends, which we don't often see.
Chapters.
I think these days in big Hollywood blockbusters, it's difficult to break out of the 3-act sort of trap. So I think the 5 acts, my understanding, tell me if I'm wrong, there's a little bookend with the ship on the ice. Then we have a first act, which is Victor's life. And his kind of personal emptiness. We have a second act, which is building the creature, which ends with the big Frankenstein lightning scene, which we always see in all of these movies, and which incidentally does not happen in the book. Then we have a third act, which is imprisoning the creature, and the kind of the moral dilemma of what am I going to do with this 6-foot toddler now that I've created him. Then we have a fourth act, which actually has an intertitle, The Creature's Tale, and then we have the final fifth act, which is like the final chase. Which sort of seals up that opening bookend. So quite interesting to see if I'm not. I used to quite like the idea of 5-act films, but actually I think it tends to just make things run on too long. I agree in this case. I think this film probably didn't really need to be 2.5 hours, and I feel like it does sort of go over the same ground a little bit too often,
especially in the middle. I thought when it starts. And as the creature's tale is suddenly jolts back to life.
Yes, it does.
Right, I felt like that. And also, it was almost like the idea at the end of like the hunted becoming the hunter, right? And that, the film starts like that and ends like that. But I think, as you've rang the spoiler alert, right? I felt like the ending is just overly sentimental, and I think that he wanted probably to give this sort of redemptive arc, and I think it goes back to the sort of who he is really, and his upbringing, and his Mexican culture, and his Catholic upbringing that is very prominent in all his films, and it might be that that there is that sort of redemptive Catholic cathartic ending of like I forgive you, which I felt like again as you said, so telling, like please like we already know when he calls him father, you don't have to spell it one more time. I forgive you when you're ready, placing your hand on his heart, you know what I mean? It just felt like, oh my goodness. But
it's kind of overwrought and somehow unearned, I think.
Yes.
At the beginning as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's
I agree.
It's totally cheap. It's completely unearned. It's a redemption that he doesn't deserve, and it comes way too easily. And moments after, if you think about the timeline of getting into that cabin, it's maybe a couple of hours or something like that before he gets redemption, and it's just it's so fast. This is the same creature who was trying to kill him a few minutes ago, and all of a sudden he's getting a very cheap redemption. So I think that's a massive mistake. And the entire chase scene it's absurd in the sense that, like, the monster's not scared of Victor. He's sort of leading him to his death, I suppose, is what the idea. And Victor's scared of the monster, yet he's chasing the monster. And it comes off being very, very strange, and and this is the climax essentially. And it's just, it ends very weakly, I think. And it's not like it ends very weakly after being fantastic for 2.5 hours. It's more that they've tried to tell the entire story of the novel, except leaving out some of the major and good bits, and then very quickly come to this chase scene to conclude the film. And it doesn't work as a I don't think the structure works. If we're talking about the 5 acts, it doesn't. It actually belabors the film, I think, more than it helps the story.
And it almost makes, it just ruins the whole film, because it's almost like, oh yeah, they're the two monsters, but everything's fine at the end because they forgave each other. Great, okay.
Yeah, two monsters. And boy, how many Frankensteins are there anyway? That's what I sometimes ask myself.
It does feel like there's too much telling instead of showing. Just that moment when William the brother is killed by the monster.
Oh, yeah.
And Victor goes after him and says, poor you, William, or we'll get you patched or whatever. And William's dying breath as he looks at his brother and he says, "You are the monster," and then dies.
Exactly.
So just
in case the audience didn't realise,
in case anybody hadn't got it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
On the nose.
But listen, I think the dialogue throughout a lot of the film, I did kind of grind my gears a little bit. During the monsters or the creature's tale, there are these scenes where he fetches sticks for the family, where he's hiding in their garage, as far as I can tell, and the family come out of the house and they say, "Oh, look, sticks," and the camera turns to sticks, and then the camera shows you more sticks, and the characters say, "And more sticks here." And it's like we really don't need to hear people commenting on the fact that there are sticks while we are also looking at the sticks. It's like, I don't know why is this dialogue here? What's this for? And it feels like that feels like a lot of the dialogue all the way through. It feels almost like it started out as a radio play, and then suddenly they got the money to film visuals to accompany it. There's an awful lot of describing what we are seeing on the screen as it happens. Right in that opening scene when the monster is trying to get onto the boat. And Mikkelsen, Lars Mikkelsen, the captain, he kind of, he's aiming his gun and he deliberately points it away from the monster towards the ice, and he says to one of his boatsmen, or whatever, he says, "I'm not aiming for the monster." It's like, we can see that. Just see you move your gun. You don't need to tell us as well.
There's a lot of showing and telling, I guess, which is
a lot of showing and telling. Just don't.
A greater sin, yeah.
And like you've said, Del Toro is a real kind of visual stylist. He's perfectly capable of telling these stories with visuals which are tremendously engaging and beautiful. Why not? Why does he? I'm surprised he doesn't have the confidence to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it might also be Netflix's influence. They gave him all that money. You have to remember that this is a Netflix movie, so. I don't know. I'm just wondering if there is.
Yeah, my understanding is that one of Netflix's creative directives is to make films phone-proof, so that people who are watching the movie or the TV show while they are browsing their phone can still follow the story, even though they're only giving the screen 50% of their attention. Oof. So it might be something to do with that. I'm sure you can guess what I feel about that.
I think I felt the first half is, Victor's dialogue is just so heavy-handed, isn't it? That's why I felt I was quite relieved when it came the second chapter. It's like, okay, the creature's tale, because at least there was less telling.
Yes.
And again, the dialogue was totally overwrought in the first half. And I just got a bit tired out of Oscar Isaac's performance, which at the beginning is incredible. He's like such a great manic scientist, right?
Yes.
But, and that's why I loved, Elizabeth's interjection, because it just gave another quality to the film, and it was almost like the sort of ventilator that the film needed at times. And I just wished, there was less bromance and more romance. But again, because he's not sure of the tone, right? If he would lean more on the romance melodrama type, but still wanting to, not let go of the horror. And I think particularly in the middle, that is very evident.
There's one last little dialogue thing which I wrote down in my notebook, which was when Victor is commenting on the death of his mother, I think, and he has this little voiceover where he says, "The firmament was permanently dark now," which is just such an ugly phrase. I had to write it down.
Yeah.
Why have you made that rhyme? What? Why? It just really, really stood out at me. But well, okay.
I love the hatred. I love that you single out that line.
I want my 2.5 hours back.
Fair enough.
I think one thing I really don't like is that and part of it is due to the narration, I think, but you've got like these double expositions and triple expositions, and there's just too much background. It's like an origin story both for the creator, and we learn that he's a bastard because his father was a bastard and didn't love his wife and didn't love Victor very much, but loved the younger brother William more. So that's to inform us about, the motivations for Victor to try and create a new life. So we get his background, we get his father's background, essentially. Then we get the whole story of the creature, of course, and the animation process and bringing them to life. We end up dedicating all this time to exposition, and yet cutting out things like, I think, and James, you've already alluded to it a little bit, like the monster really doesn't have a lot to do, because there's this whole section that's in the book and even in the other film where the monster's out in society and interacting and getting into trouble, but also bringing happiness to people. But there's all this time spent like talking about their backgrounds and their origin stories when it should be present day. So the natural pace of the book, the natural pace of the story is not there because it keeps getting interrupted. And another scene I really have a terrible time with is the whole sequence with the old blind man, because there's all this setup to get them alone in that house together so he can start learning. But there's probably 10 or 15 minutes around just the workings of the farm and the animals and the wolf attacks and Frankenstein hiding out in there, the monster hiding out in there. And it takes away from the only thing you need to know is that, from that scene is that he hits this blind man, he learns a lot, and then he moves a lot into society. He takes that knowledge out, and it takes away from the depth of the character of the monster, and that's why you feel like he has nothing to do. And it also it's ignoring great parts of the source material in order to just do another like origin story, which is it's sort of very superhero film. And that's why also I think, there are these superhero powers that I've never associated with Frankenstein, being able to move ships or as you said, throw lightning bolts or jump onto a boat or something like that. So and there are areas where I think this film really succeeds, but they're very subtle. And I think all these other things get in the way of the successes of the film.
What do you guys feel that this film should be rich with metaphor? And like you say, Inês, this feels like a super timely era for us to have a Frankenstein film. It's exactly at the right time. But
exactly.
What do you feel this film is actually about?
I think it focuses more on the father and son relationship, right? Like how you become the parent, right? Like how was played by Charles Dance, right? Victor's dad, and then Victor becomes like his own father and becomes the real monster. So I think it's sort of, I read somewhere that his intention was to sort of show how we pass pain through, to our children. And I could relate, sort of, we all relate in terms of how, when we were growing up and saying, we will never do this like our parents used to do, and then we end up doing and doing exactly the same as I find myself doing exactly the same or saying exactly the same things as my mum used to say, and that used to really annoy me, which I promised I would never say. So it's that thing that you do become your parents, and I think probably, I don't know how his relationship was with his father, but I felt that a lot throughout the movie. That which again is not very complex. And I think that's why the creature doesn't have that much to do, really, because this is pretty obvious. And as you explained, Laurenti, it was just so hammered in both their expositional origins that it didn't really give room for something else and deeper metaphors, and how, if you think about it, is like how God abandons its own creature, right? Like abandoned its own creation. And that is quite powerful. And again, that is quite timely. And we could think, more about how, these monsters and, how these creatures are misunderstood and the humanity about it all. But I felt like Mary Shelley's novel has a lot more than this film offered. I still think it's very valuable and to have this very human film. But again, I don't think is metaphorically complex, if you know what I mean. It's just, it goes, the sort of philosophical and spiritual touch there is quite superficial. It doesn't go deep enough, I felt.
Right, yep.
I definitely got those feelings, though, and I felt like Del Toro understands this is an Old Testament, New Testament myth, the whole Frankenstein thing. You've got the creator, he's a vengeful creator, he causes trauma on his creations, basically. This is a great God story, and I think all Frankenstein stories are ultimately Christ stories. This thing that's been put together from other parts, this a collection of human beings, actually becomes one better whole. And then, he ends up...
even he did that with Pinocchio, if you think about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And he ends up being tortured. The creation ends up being tortured by its forefathers. And then, I think the one thing that the film really gets is this, from the Christ metaphor perspective, is he's alone. He has to live forever, right? He can't die. And he has to carry all these sins and the burdens of humanity for us. So, I mean, it's classic God, Christ, Father, Son stories. And it's I think it does come across pretty well, but it's I think you were alluding to this. It gets hammered into you again and again and again. Yeah. So it's not subtle by any means, but it is the right message. It is the right story. I think he does a great job with that. But I think it gets a little buried, even though it's in your face all the time. It's not, I think the emphasis is more on it being a big film. It's an action film. It's epic, intentionally epic, and it's over the top. There's a lot of the Baz Luhrmann treatment I find in this film.
Oh, yes.
And that's when you were talking about piles of sticks, like, okay, we don't need to hear that there are piles of sticks. We don't need to see 77 piles of sticks. We can do it without the song and dance and the big spectacle and still get the message. So...
God, that laboratory that he has really feels like a Baz Luhrmann laboratory somehow.
Exactly.
It's like an enormous Gothic laboratory with an absolutely massive hole in the middle.
Yes, and
with no kind of guard or shield or anything like that. So that someone is definitely going to be falling down that in about 10 or 15 minutes.
And a lot of gasoline that we've never seen delivered, or how do you get it to remote parts of Scotland?
Gallons.
That's interesting. They don't deliver the gasoline in big buckets, do they? It's 400 small buckets of gasoline. That's how it's brought out. I feel like that any sort of contemporary film about Frankenstein should really kind of be about ChatGPT, shouldn't it? I think this is our modern, our 2025 equivalent. This enormous artificial brain, which we have created, and now somehow an awful lot of people seem to be relying on. And yet I found it quite difficult to find any kind of very valid metaphor for ChatGPT in this film.
It should be more about rise up against the creator, if it was like ChatGPT.
Right? Exactly. It feels like we're siding with ChatGPT against Sam Altman. Yes. I'm guessing that Sir Christopher Waltz's character, who has an enormous amount of money that he's got from arms sales, and then he is paying for the creation of this monster, and yet his big secret is that he has syphilis, and wants the monster to house his brain. And I suppose that is a kind of Californian tech bro sort of character. Maybe he's like Peter Thiel or something like that. I don't know, but exactly. I don't quite think it adds up, or it doesn't necessarily. I don't know whether they quite complete the thought. So I'm at the end of the day. Does the film sort of say we should be creating ChatGPT, and then humans should die, so ChatGPT should live. Is that what we're saying, or are we saying that having server farms up in the Arctic is the future? I mean, I don't know what it's trying to say. I'm slightly lost.
Yeah, you wouldn't need to cool the units, right? Because you use a lot of water, so it'd be cool already. But you'd have to get the electricity there. I don't think the hydro capacity is strong enough. It's a great idea. Nice idea.
Come on, let's be positive and think that this film is all about furthering the human understanding.
Yeah. Well, I think there's just automatically zeitgeist. It's a new product. It's a new film, and we just compare it automatically to what's happening in the world. I think some of it's intentional, for sure. What was that? I don't know if you saw the film Mountainhead, which was Jesse Armstrong just did that for, I think, HBO. And that features four tech bros, very, very wealthy people, clearly Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and all that. And there's that very same note. I think it's really obvious in that film where Peter Thiel wants to be uploaded into the ether of the cyber world when he dies. That immediately struck me when I saw Christoph Waltz dying. He's been funding this all along. He's been giving the ideas and supporting the younger guys, but he wants eternal life himself. It's a nice balance here. I don't think you see that in the book, where you've got eternal life for the creature that is unwanted, and then you've got the guy who actually wants eternal life not getting it. So it's well done.
The tragedy of it all. I agree. I like the tragic element of that, and I think that's a fresh take. And I think I was just talking to James before, I was quite happy to see that, this film struck a chord with younger audiences, and talking to my students about it and how much they loved it. And, it makes me so happy when I'm able to, watch a movie and then see the excitement around it, with younger people and going to the cinemas to watch it. And, if it managed to do that, then great. And, again, you might not accomplish all the things that he set out to, I imagine, but it's still a particularly poignant movie with, a beautiful message. And even if that didn't come across as powerful as it could have been, but I still agree that it's there. And again, the sort of, I was just thinking about how even poor things, like we were talking about Yorgos Lanthimos and how you reviewed his earlier film earlier, even Poor Things evokes Frankenstein and that theme, right? And that theme, and I wish there was more interaction, as you mentioned, like the book, with society to see how despised he is, right? And I think that would have given more complexity to the creature. It only really happens when he goes to the blind man's, as you call it, garage, James.
That's what it feels like, isn't it? Sorry. I will quickly talk about the book. So I did read the book this week, having read it, I don't know, 30 years ago or whatever. So picked it up and read it again this week. I was surprised how much the film deviates from the book. Yeah. It does have the Arctic explorer bookends. In the book, the story is kind of simpler, I would say, insofar as Victor Frankenstein, he grows up with Elizabeth and William as his adopted siblings. Yeah. And his parents always intend him to marry Elizabeth, even though she's kind of his stepsister. Yeah, but his intellectual vanity means that he wants to be the first person to build an artificial human. But the actual scene of creating life happens super quickly. It happens in a paragraph. We don't have all this complicated electrical equipment. Yeah. It's all kind of blipped over pretty much. And then we do have the scene in the book that we have in the movie where he thinks that it hasn't worked, so he goes to bed, and then when he wakes up, the creature is visiting him in his bedroom. Yeah. But after that scene, basically, Victor
I love that scene, by the way. I really like that scene. And when he looks at him, I loved it. I thought that was a great scene.
Little peekaboo moment too there.
In the book, Victor's response to this is just to panic and run away for months. And then in his absence, the creature kills William. Yep. And then when Victor kind of returns home to Austria or Geneva or whatever, he meets the monster. The monster tells him his story, about hiding in the garage and learning to read and stuff like that. Yep. And he tells him, "I need a companion." And so we may have said this earlier. Victor then goes to Scotland, and it's very, very close to making a woman creature, and then he gets cold feet at the last minute and destroys it. The creature is kind of furious, and so instead Victor goes off, he marries Elizabeth, and then the night after the wedding, the monster murders Elizabeth, and then they have a big chase to the North Pole, and that's pretty much it, actually. So there are kind of fewer characters, more murders, and there's kind of quite a lot of pages of either travelling around 18th century Europe in a pretty travelogue, or there's quite a lot of pages of like 18th century soap opera about kind of ruined families and complicated sets of cousins and adopted children. So it kind of has all those sort of tropes.
Yeah.
But like the whole thing about a wealthy benefactor, and William marrying Elizabeth, and her then wanting to treat the creature kindly, all that's all completely sort of utterly made up. So it's almost like he's taken the cliff notes of Frankenstein and then sort of like cut them up and rearranged all the pieces. Or someone sent him like a summary of the book, and he only really listened to about 2/5 of it, and was kind of like doing something else for the rest of it, and so he could remember, oh yeah, there's this woman called Elizabeth, he's got a brother called William, all right, we'll do that. The book is still great. The book is fun. The book is maybe a little bit patchy. The book is written by an 18-year-old woman. What an incredible achievement. I mean, absolutely astonishing, really. And the book still feels timely in the way that this film feels timely. We as humans love the idea of kind of creating artificial life. And it's, it's a cute exploration of that. The book is still good. As if my opinion on the book matters to anybody, I realise. But
of course it does.
In my humble, irrelevant opinion, the book is still good.
I love the book. I think it's beautifully written. It's a fantastic book, and it's dark at the same time. So it's one of my favorite books. It definitely influenced me tremendously.
I felt like the book is one thing. Now that I was listening to you, James, is I felt the book is weirder. In a great way, right? And this is like, the film is like beautifully weird, isn't it? It's like the film just has more tenderness, and because again it focuses more on the loneliness and less on the weirdness of it all, right? And I wish it had gone more like Kronos did, right? The balance was stronger in Kronos in terms of like threading that line between sort of the weird strangeness of the creature and the horror elements. And I think I wish he had pushed that further. But I think he went more towards the tenderness and the melancholy and the loneliness. And fair enough, it was his decision. And, and I think he's probably quite happy with it. And if we think about, this being sort of the end of all these monsters that he's been depicting for years, it's and his age and his career, and he probably did want that redemptive arc. And can't really fault him on that in terms of giving us an entertaining and cinematic piece, and wanting that to be his sort of last movie of this trilogy. If we think about the other two, all his films, I think, always feature monsters in one way or another. So.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, God, you're going to have to remind me. Trilogy, what are the other two?
Well, I imagine like Kronos, and then if we focus on the father, it could either be, what is the Mexican one? Not Hellboy. It's, could be also Pinocchio.
Pinocchio, I would think, for sure.
It could be. Yeah, so it could be, like Kronos, Pinocchio, and this one.
Right, yeah.
It felt like he needed Ron Perlman, didn't it? I mean, it felt like this role, the Lordy part was sort of written for Ron Perlman, and for whatever reason, it doesn't end up that way. But for me, I think one of the biggest mistakes is, again, just avoiding that nature-nurture theme, which is super important in the film. And I think you get that with more experience for the monster and seeing his development. Because, it's this question, it's the Voltaire-Rousseau argument of does civilization corrupt people, or does it make people better, or more human? And I just thought of that when James was talking about the iciness, the cold human nature of the whole film. And so you don't see the arc well enough for the monster and what he could be. It seems more of a monster film rather than a person becoming more civilized, or creation becoming more civilized. And, you've got the whole immaculate conception thing going on in all these stories too, where it's a human being, or is it a god? Of course, created from other body parts. But one thing I really did like is that at one point, I think the creature even says it. I'm not sure, so it's kind of a tell, don't show. But he starts to feel the pieces of all the other men that comprise him.
Yeah.
Like he's been put together by all these different pieces.
I remember that too.
And
He does say it.
Yeah. So, I think those themes are there, but they're not quite strong enough. And I think in favor of other sort of showy things.
Yeah.
I tell you what, this film has a lot of murders in it. And a lot of people get killed, but very, very little police presence.
Yeah.
I tell you who they could really deal with is a visit from the Cliche Squad.
Cliche Squad.
Oh dear. Well, we already know my opinion. There's too many cliches for me this week. I'm really sorry. Like, the patron with an agenda. Even like the notion of the gentle giant. He's a large brute, but actually a gentle, sensitive soul.
Yeah.
I mean, some of this you can't really blame on the film because these are, Frankenstein was kind of like the first book that sort of did this. So maybe it's wrong for me to leap on it. There's one other which really did stick out to me, which is the poor aim. That is like the moment that you see Victor produce a gun, you know for sure that the wrong person will be shot.
I know, that scene was so,
and like that, the scene where Elizabeth jumps in front of the monster just as that was just a little bit too much. I felt that was way too telegraphed.
Move away!
He's a surgeon. He's not supposed to fire guns.
No precision in a surgeon, of course.
Just have those hands that don't flinch, right? Instead, he's a poor shot. A couple of my cliches are kind of just filmmaking cliches. I think there's something of an idea that if it's a novel, it needs a narrator, and I just don't think that's the case, and I think that really bogs this film down a lot.
So annoying.
Another thing that's starting to drive me crazy is this heavy color separation for characters of interest. Like Victor's mother is always in red, I think, and then there's a sepia tone for the rest. Everything else is kind of bled of color, but then there's red, and then we see the same treatment for Elizabeth later on, and it sort of gets you into these Oedipus feelings too, I think. But I always look at that as just being kind of on the nose. It's like color by numbers, or I guess it makes it viewer friendly or something like that. Oh, we know this is a character of interest, or this is the love character. But also that I really was upset by the Victor dying in the cabin and getting that forgiveness. And then as soon as he gets the I'm sorry, oh, I forgive you, Father, he's dead, right? I mean,
I know.
I thought we were getting away from some
timing.
things like that. But this film has a lot of extremes. Like, you've got as you said, the tallest, most unbelievable, but so isolated castle in the middle of nowhere, with the rain just coming right into it because actually it was never finished and there's a hole in the top of the place. Or this massive boat that has no right being up there. You wouldn't have a ship that large in the Arctic. So I think a lot of this is the Baz Luhrmann effect for me, just over the top all the time. Whereas I think it becomes more believable. If you want your story to really ring true and be believable, it has to be under the top, not over the top. So I think that those are filmmaking cliches for the most part. But it's the question is it just strong source material that makes us think these are cliches, or are they cliches? But in the filmmaking details, I think they are cliches.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Well, overall, I know I've come out very negative on this movie, but you guys have persuaded me that it does have its good points.
I think,
nice. We have our own redemptive quality in this podcast.
I do have all the same notes that you had at the beginning, though. I definitely have very mixed feelings about it, but because I already have Netflix and it was on and I could sit on my sofa and watch it and take notes, but not write a synopsis, I thought it was good, yeah.
Maybe you just need a better sofa, James.
Yes, it all boils down to the furniture. Okay, we will have a break and then we'll come back to I think almost exactly the same story, but a younger, blacker and whiter version. We will talk about Young Frankenstein.
Welcome back, everyone, to a younger Frankenstein. I don't know. And this is a Frankenstein. I don't know if you need a synopsis. It's kind of like the last film where maybe we don't need
like the last film.
a synopsis.
Very similar.
We're comparing Del Toro's Frankenstein of 2025 to Young Frankenstein of, is it 50 years exactly earlier? Something
Just
like
more,
that,
1974, I think. Yeah.
51 years earlier, Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein, which was written with, it starred Gene Wilder. It actually started out as a Gene Wilder idea and got to Mel Brooks and got the Mel Brooks treatment. And maybe we need a synopsis. I mean...
I feel like that. I mean, there have been so many Frankenstein films that we could have. I mean, there have been so many Frankenstein films. There was like the Kenneth Branagh version with Robert De Niro.
Oh God, that was terrible.
But like, the whole bunch of Universal films. The 1970s version with Andy Warhol's name pasted over it. I mean, it's just endless.
Yeah.
This story has been treated so many times. You were the one who suggested we should go with Young Frankenstein.
I did.
And maybe this is perhaps one of the best Frankensteins. But how come you chose this one for us to compare it to?
Do you have any other questions for me, Counsel?
I remember loving it as a kid and thinking it was hilarious. And I've seen it a few times since then. I think the reason I like it is it's oddly one of the most Frankensteinian Frankensteins because they're just these open nods to James Whale's work and Bride of Frankenstein for sure, and all the early Frankenstein. So I think, yes, it automatically takes the source material from the Shelley novel, but at the same time, it's actually really borrowing from the good Frankensteins that preceded it and not some of the weaker ones later on that were just sort of cashing in on the whole property. So I love the black and white look. I just think it looks like the old films. And I think it respectfully departs from them. I mean, it's definitely got all the good stuff, and then it does some zany stuff for the 1970s that makes it a treat.
And Inês, have you seen it before?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
Yes, I have, but many years ago, and I was totally terrified by the previous Frankenstein, James Whale's one, and I remember I always used to hide whenever it was on TV on RTP2. Really freaked me out. And then I remember my dad telling me about, come and see, this one is funny, this one is funny. And I remember, because I was already so afraid of the creature, and I was about, 8 or 9, so I watched it, but I probably spent half of the time either with my eyes closed or with my ears closed as well, so it wasn't a very informative experience. And then I managed to find it on the Internet Archive, and then it's just such a lovely, brilliant comedy, and it just gave me such a warm feeling, and remembering about those times when I felt horrified by it, and but remembering also like my dad's laughter, and I don't know, that this really brings me back to the sort of the best of British comedies like Fawlty Towers and Dinner for One, like these chaos, and it's such a brilliant horror spoof, isn't it? It's just so good. So it's a real joy to watch it.
I only realised this week Mel Brooks still alive. He's 99.
I know. I
Still
also
going.
checked that out. My God, he's incredible. It looks really well.
He was born Melvin Kaminsky, comedy writer for years and years. His first feature film directing debut was The Producers in 1967, which he got the Academy Award for the best screenplay, I think.
Wow.
And then, do you know what his second film was?
The Saddlers. No, what's it called?
Blazing Saddles was the third.
Yeah,
film.
exactly. Blazing Saddles. Also with Gene Wilder, right?
Yes, but before that, he made a film called The 12 Chairs, which was a complete disaster. I've never seen it, never heard of it.
Huh.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, then after 12 Chairs, he made Blazing Saddles. Blazing Saddles was the second highest grossing film of 1974.
Really?
Making $120 million on a $2.6 million budget. And on the set of Blazing Saddles, Gene Wilder persuaded Mel Brooks to make Young Frankenstein as his next movie. Young Frankenstein was the third highest grossing film of 1974.
Wow.
with a take of 86 million. I'm not sure that has ever been done before or since. The same director made the second and third highest grossing films of the same year.
1 year.
How amazing.
Interesting. And it's the film that Brooks apparently these days is proudest of. He says it's not his funniest film, but it's his favourite. Quick trivia question.
Yeah.
Do you know what was the highest grossing film of 1974? Have a guess.
Of course. Wasn't it Jaws?
Yeah.
No, I think Jaws was that 75.
Oh, Jaws is 75.
I think Jaws was the following year, 1974. And this is such a blast from the past. The highest grossing film in 1974 was The Towering Inferno.
My.
Oh, wow.
Unbelievably, it made just very slightly more money than Blazing Saddles, but hardly much. But yeah,
Gosh.
Jeez. Yeah, he had a good year. Yeah. Very good year. I think I agree with him. I think I love Blazing Saddles as well, but I think for in terms of like filmmaking, it's quite an achievement to really capture that look and really nail all that stuff, all those periods.
It is, isn't it?
Pieces, yeah, it's great set design and great cinematography, and I think that really helps out. So I can understand why it would be his favorite film.
Now I know we've both written a synopsis this week. Do you want to read yours, or shall I read mine?
You should read yours. I need to suffer. I need punishment.
So, Young Frankenstein is a black and white, madcap Mel Brooks comedy from 1974. Frederick Frankenstein, that's it, isn't it? Frankenstein. Is the grandson of the controversial Transylvania scientist Victor Frankenstein, and he's a mild-mannered New York medical school lecturer, engaged to Madeline Kahn, and trying to live down his name's famous legacy until a message arrives for him. He has inherited Frankenstein, I'm going to get this wrong all the way through now, Frankenstein Castle. Travelling by suspiciously direct train, he goes to inspect the castle, where Marty Feldman's Igor and Terry Garr's Inga are keen to help him set up a laboratory, while Cloris Leachman's mysterious Frau Blücher has stayed on as housekeeper. Can Frederick unearth the mysteries of the secret Frankenstein library? Will he resist the temptation to complete his grandfather's experiments? And how will the suspicious townfolk react to the appearance of a 7-foot-tall monster with a weakness for violin music? So I, too, like you, saw this film many, many years ago. I hadn't seen it for a long time. So sat down to watch it this week. I laughed out loud. I'm not ashamed to say. There's a whole bunch of genuine laugh out loud gags in this film.
Yeah.
Like the revolving bookcase. I feel like I've seen that done in loads of movies. But I'm guessing this was probably maybe the first time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like the musical number with Putting on the Ritz.
Oh my God. It's like the producers, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It really reminded me of the producers. That scene was so good.
Basically, any time Madeline Kahn was on screen, I was just guffawing. It's still very funny.
It's funny and fun, isn't it?
Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman is unbelievable.
Oh my God, yes.
Oh my God, he's brilliant, isn't he?
As the blind monk, just so funny. I love that whole scene.
The blind monk.
And that's really efficient compared to, when you think about the other film. Just very efficient. Knocks on the door, arrives. They have a few awesome laughs, and then he's out. He busts right out the door.
when I forgot Gene Hackman was in it, and when he came on, I thought, oh God, this must be a really early role, but it's not. This is the same year as The Conversation.
Yeah.
God,
so
really?
this is Gene Hackman kind of at his absolute height, doing this kind of crazy, silly, one-scene comedy role in this film. Fantastic. He's great. He's very funny.
He probably had so much fun, I imagine.
Yeah.
And also there's honestly, I really enjoy it. As you said, like the pacing, everything's so fast. It's so effective, isn't it? This is like great storytelling. Like the turn of events and the humour. It's just the editing is perfect. I really felt like this was really, really great.
And also, it's a pretty impressive bit of cinematography, really. I love the way that Gene Hackman scene ends with Gene Hackman saying, I was going to make espresso.
Yeah.
And then immediately after that, it cuts to this shot of the creature's tall shadows up against the wall in what is the most expressionist shot in the film, and I'm sure that is not a coincidence that they have cut from espresso to expressionism. I bet that is
more now.
deliberate.
Going back to more now, wasn't it? I really felt it was so good.
There are so many just great individual shots and close-ups, especially, and there's wonderful balance between big frames of large parts of the castle or the laboratory, and then also wonderful just cuts to close-ups that are just really, really telling. There's a lot of information in every shot, and that's one thing that really struck me about this film is that there's a lot of great visual storytelling just because you're getting so much atmosphere and just long, painstaking pans just to show you spaces and show you people, and it's really good visual storytelling. And
visual and economic, right?
Yeah.
It really feels like that. Yeah.
And you're thinking about it as being comedy, but it's actually just some fantastic filmmaking too.
Yeah, it is, absolutely is. Apparently, I think a lot of the sets or the equipment, the electrical gizmos and things like that are originals from the James Whale film.
Yep, they are.
Which they dug out of storage. So it
Actually,
knows where it's
to
come
say,
from, this film, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I couldn't believe it. I told Andres because I've had the good fortune of meeting the producer, Michael Gruskoff. And it's incredible, actually. When Andres told me that this was the movie, and I found it online, and then I started watching it, and I said, oh my God, this is Michael's. and I had... it all started, I met him like a couple of years ago. I have a project that is set in LA, and it was the good old Sandy Lieberson that both of you know. And he's very good friends with Michael, and he thought that this project of mine, Sandy really liked the idea, and he asked me, can I show it to my friend Michael Gruskoff? And then we went to LA, and I had, the privilege of spending several days cruising around LA on a sort of a recce for this film with Sandy and Michael.
Oh, wow.
We're going to sort of from prisons in East LA to sort of nice Joan's in Beverly Hills, and just seeing they are the old classic Hollywood that wherever they go, people know them. Hello.
Of course.
And it's just, and he was such a wonderful man. And I remember talking about this film with him, and I couldn't believe it. What are the odds that I'm now here talking about this movie? It's just incredible. Yeah. So thank you.
I saw the film on DVD, and in the bonus features, there's a great little documentary, making of, and Michael Gruskoff features quite prominently in there.
Yeah. Does he? Oh,
yeah.
Really?
So if you can get that, there's a little
Mm.
making of. It's probably on YouTube somewhere, but the beauties of the DVD.
I'll try to find it.
Yeah. So I saw him, and he talks about it a lot. He's featured very prominently in the documentary. So.
He's super proud. He's super proud of this film, and I think they were trying to. He's 90 now, and I think he had some health issues recently. But I think they're trying to do a spin-off or something, or a TV series about Young Frankenstein, a comedy. Yeah, so we'll see.
Brilliant.
See what happens.
We were talking earlier about how hilarious that this film is. It is a picture from a different era.
Yeah, definitely.
As far as some of the things that you are invited to laugh at. So the idea, Marty Feldman has a divergent squint, and we're supposed to find that funny. His character has kyphosis, and we're supposed to find it funny. A prosthetic arm is funny. Learning disabilities are funny. There is an argument to be made that quite a bit of the humour of this film is kind of punching down, isn't it? And if there is a revisit of this film in the modern era, some of it will kind of have to change. And it's also some of it is kind of a bit sexist. Towards the end of the film,
bit.
Madeline Kahn is raped, and there is a joke about it. I mean, it's like an I Spy book of all the things
raped.
which is not really appropriate to make a joke about these days. But that said, I think within the tone of this film, I don't know. I was not grabbing my handbag and writing a letter to the editor while watching this film, and that may be something to do with the tone of it. I don't know, but maybe that's just because I am old-fashioned and should be more easily offended than I am.
No, I feel sort of the intentions were good, right? You have to remember the time. I didn't feel, particularly offended, because you just sort of is that suspension of disbelief, isn't it? And you know that this was set in a different era, and I never, and of course, it is rather offensive in many ways, but I don't know, it didn't struck me as they were looking to offend. And I think Mel Brooks, I really like him as a filmmaker, and Gene Wilder, and again, I think that the film is funny and fun, and it never tries to, it is what it is, right? Like good slapstick humor.
Yep.
And I bought into it, and if you let yourself go, then you don't really second guess and try to read into what they're trying to say, because it's pretty obvious, and it's there. So and I felt like the writing was pretty clever overall. I didn't, again, even might be totally anti-feminist at the moment, but I didn't feel like it was a rape scene. I felt like she was so enthralled by the size of his genitals that she was particularly eager to have him on top of her. So that was my understanding of that scene, to be honest. And then it cuts to their very happy life together. Which I quite find it funny that the creature here can have a love affair. You know what I mean? I love that. Yeah,
it is quite funny though, because I don't think in the current version the Elizabeth character does that much better, right? It's just like they both fall in love with this monster, and they both suffer consequences as a result. But I think the fact that it's a joyous relationship and becomes this marriage in Young Frankenstein kind of tells you something you really need to know about the tone of this film. It's totally different in the sense that it's he goes from being Frankenstein and denying the call, right? He does this twice. He tells that he's giving the lecture and says, I'm not my great grandfather. And then later on, when he gets to the laboratory, I'm not going to create a monster. And he finally says that my name is Frankenstein. He embraces his true self. So there is a story about identity and accepting oneself in this film, and it comes after he's used hugs and love to nurture the monster into being a better creature. It's completely different from other versions where he's just seen as a monster and he treats him poorly. Frankenstein treats his creation poorly, and by no surprise, things end up going poorly. This is a film about, he even says that love is the answer, I think, at one point, which is super corny, but it's a great message. And they actually do that in this film. It actually does work. So there's the lighter tone gives Brooks and Wilder, I think, a chance to send a good message, a very positive message, and yet still maintain some of the crassness of the humor, but also the existing story material of Frankenstein. And they do not belabor the creation process or the reanimation process. They don't go into all the technical gadgetry and all that. It just kind of happens quite quickly, and it's just one body, I think, and they stick another brain in. That's about it. I don't know how the penis comes into all that, but it's obviously an important piece, because at the very end, the monster's quite eloquent. He's been educated and civilized. And then for some reason, this is the one thing that I don't really understand too much. There's this transfer. They go on the two tables and they're exchanging things. And when in hindsight, you think, okay, Gene Wilder wanted the penis power. So he does this elaborate, experiment. And sure enough, at the end, he gets the powers of the monster's penis. And the monster, I guess, is still doing okay. He doesn't seem as sexually vibrant in that last scene with the wife. He's like just kind of reading a book in bed, and he does not want to perform. So,
which is the irony of it, and that's what is brilliant about it, isn't it? I like that, and I felt, I think Gene Wilder is just superb, isn't he? There's the young Frankenstein, and Peter Boyle as well, because they're both. Didn't you find? I found that they're both hilarious, but also there's such tenderness about them, right? And that sense of masculine vulnerability. And it was just really lovely to see, even at that time. And when the monster gets given that flower, and which was very much like Elizabeth and the whole leaf sequence, right? When you're treated with kindness, right? Then you treat others differently, and so that's when the monster becomes civilized and good. And I think there's a lovely moment, as you said, that there's a journey in the Dr. Frankenstein, and when he mentions you are good to the creature, remember?
Yeah.
And this is lovely, and and I think together they make the greatest contribution to science.
Well, it has all that human warmth that you said was missing in the other film. This is a very human story, and the variety of characters is tremendous, and I think it really helps the story as well. Like, we see some crazy characters. You see some people who have differences that are accepted.
Policeman.
All these. Yeah, so I mean, you could look at all those, the prosthetic gags and things like that as being sort of insulting, but at the same time, it's a very inclusive cast of characters, and you get this wide variety, which is wonderful.
There's this sort of irresistible sense of chaos that I love.
Great timing as well. It's really worth noting how good like the comic timing is. I mean, by this point, Mel Brooks was an extremely experienced comedy writer and performer, but like the timing for the gags in this film is really exceptional. I think just like like the way that they deliver the line about "don't move the candle" or "remove the candle." It's just so fantastically well delivered. These are funny gags, elevated by excellent performances. And this is like a textbook of big screen comedy. And we have a bit of a dearth of big screen comedies these days. It's really nice to see a feature film comedy because they've become a rarity.
And what is it? An hour and 40 minutes or something like that too. So just the timing of the film too is just fantastic in that way. And again, DVD, deleted scenes. I saw some of the things that were taken out, and with good reason. It's a little confusing because you go from the opening image. There's someone pulling like a box of, we assume, money out of the hands of this pretty well decayed skeleton in a coffin. Which it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's wonderful, and then that box is in the hands of this person who sees Frankenstein's lecture in New York City, and then all of a sudden he's in, as you said, that wonderful but impossible train from New York City to Transylvania.
And that's hilarious.
And then we just assume, okay, he's used the money and then he's inherited something. But there are a couple of scenes that were deleted where there's exposition on the sidewalk in New York City, and they hear a violinist playing, and the music moves Frankenstein. He's sort of come over by it, and he starts thinking about going to Transylvania, I believe. And then there's also this longer scene, 6 minutes or something like that, with their reading of the will, and there are all these people sitting around, and these, this is exposition that gets cut out of this film wisely, so, right? In order to just get him to the castle, get him there. So a few minutes into it, they're at the castle, and Marty Feldman's in there, and Terry Garr's already in there. So all the stars are coming in really early on, and just setting up the story as opposed to getting bogged down in exposition.
And it was very interesting how Transylvania is like such a mix of like Britain and Germany in a very odd way.
But very atmospheric. I mean, all that, it feels like a creepy horror film at times. It has those elements, it needs them, but it doesn't belabor it. It's not over the top or anything like that. And it supports a very warm and human story, I think.
Yep.
And he really works as a comedy, as we were saying. It's so hard to get good comedy, and it really works as a comedy, but also as a very touching story. With the same theme of understanding and of human empathy. So, it's great.
And in terms of some of the humor, I mean, humans are crass, so I think it's okay that they're a little bit, the characters are crass in the film. I think that's fine, and yes, it is. I think it's definitely sexist and insulting in some ways today, but I don't think humans have changed. I think we're still crass, aren't we?
Well, I certainly am.
I am.
I'm not. Judging by the beginning of this podcast.
So, these films that are begging to be compared, and I think there's probably quite a lot to be learned from comparing A with B. But first of all, I'm going to force you both, under threat of being electrocuted by a lightning bolt, I'm going to force you to play Who Am I? Who am I? If I've written my notes here. If I'm anybody this week, I reckon I am probably Igor out of Young Frankenstein. Igor. At least insofar as, poor posture, tick. Bad eyesight, tick. quite like electrical equipment. And he's always making stupid jokes at inappropriate moments, and that feels like me to a T, I think. Yeah. But did either of you see yourselves this week?
I was going to say Igor also. I felt maybe for some different reasons.
Me too.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh my God, it's a clean sweep.
Because I wanted to have the best lines and the best timing, and he really did. I love his lines and the best time and the expression, of course.
I liked his versatility. Like he could play. He played with a small horn. So he was accompanied. He really helps other people. I like to think of myself as being a helper. But at the same time, he's almost too helpful, and he's wonderful. But when he gets into the laboratory, he's doing things incorrectly all the time, which is kind of me as well. So like flipping switches or grabbing the wrong brain, that sort of stuff. So I think I'm Igor.
I think maybe if I start overthinking, in my dreams, I'm Igor. In my nightmares, I'm Elizabeth.
Oh. I think that's possible. You can hold both of those parts simultaneously.
I just need a cloak.
Yeah. And the hair.
Probably red. Yeah. In Guillermo del Toro's. Yeah. Just in case you weren't sure. Just to flag that very obviously.
Right, we've threatened to do it. Let's do it. We'll play the music, and we'll bring these two fairly similar films together. So I read at the top of my notes, why do we love the Frankenstein story? Because it is absolutely everywhere, isn't it? Not only are there literally dozens and dozens of Frankenstein movies, but also the Terminator is basically Frankenstein. Ex Machina, Edward Scissorhands, RoboCop. You mentioned like Poor Things. I feel like Frankenstein has been remade hundreds of times with different names over it. We absolutely love it. And I'm guessing it's something to do with it contains like some of those really, really potent ideas that we love, like immortality, parenthood, the fear of death, technology out of control, all these themes that we love to revisit. They're all in Frankenstein. They kind of, in part begin with Frankenstein. So it's sort of not surprising that it gets made again and again. It is eternally relevant.
Yeah, and I think I would harp a little bit more on the whole Christianity theme and the vengeful God themes in there too. And it just because they're so prevalent. Oh my God, I feel like I'm the monster.
Prevalent.
Victor. I'm learning language. They're very prevalent themes in society and in the world, certainly the Western world. So these, I think they're just. It's a very strong myth. So I think, and I know that screenwriters very often like to grab myths. I've written a Frankenstein story too, so I'm just as guilty as anyone else. So I think that it has an automatic in with most of the people on the planet because it's just such a strong myth.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're lazy screenwriters. We just want to borrow other stories and retell them. So, I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense that it's always relevant and prevalent. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
It's good, relevant and prevalent. That's like firmament and permanent. Very good. But so if these two films basically they are the same story, but they tell the same story first as a tragedy, then as a comedy.
Yeah.
And I think Young Frankenstein wins in my book simply because it's so much more assured, I think, in tone. It knows what it is, and sticks to it.
Yeah.
In that sense, I totally agree.
Whereas I came away feeling like from the Del Toro film, he's kind of sometimes feels like he's falling between two stools, not completely sure what he's trying to say. Does it all really crystallize out into a single vision, or does it feel a little bit confused and muddled?
I agree with you. Yeah, I think confused and muddled ultimately. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier. Like in Young Frankenstein, you're getting a lot of information in the shots, in the filmmaking. You're getting so much of the story. And ironically, you've got Del Toro, who's a fantastic visual storyteller, but he's giving us just shots with lots of information. You just get and there's a difference there. It's like it's saturation. He's giving you all these looks and all this busyness and all this glamour and technology. But I don't think you get the same kind of information, whereas Mel Brooks is giving you what you need to know to understand the story and understand the characters. And as a result, he's got a film that's much shorter and much richer and much more human, and it works. And I think there's a focus more on the technology, both of making the film and making the creature in Del Toro's film, and I think that takes away from the people story. And that in itself is sort of a metaphor of our times. And we're so interested in the technology that we're actually forgetting what it is to be human, and we're forgetting what the earth is really like. So I think,
but I don't.
Yeah, there's a stronger metaphor there.
I don't think he used that much technology to give him some credit. I think it was all physical makeup, really, and artistry. I don't think there's any CGI involved, or at least in the creature. I agree with both of you in terms of structure and in terms of tone, but I don't think it's muddled for sure and it's overstretched. But I don't think it's confused. I felt that it's still visually inspiring, and I think both directors have good intentions, and I did enjoy both of them, even though I feel that for sure Young Frankenstein is a stronger film and a terrific comedy, but I still think that Guillermo del Toro managed to bring something new and made it his own. This is definitely Guillermo del Toro's film, and it is definitely worth watching.
There's Young Frankenstein. I'm going to shy away from calling it Frankenstein now, but it's probably right, isn't it? Young Frankenstein. Okay, it does this clever thing.
Well, he does become Frankenstein
in the end. Yes,
yeah, he does. That's his art.
Yeah, it does this clever
Very
thing
subtle.
of sending home like a serious, important theme with gags. Whereas the Del Toro film kind of fails to do the opposite. I'm trying to think. There are a couple of gags. Isn't there some kind of gag where Christopher Waltz is shooting some saucy photography, and then there's some sort of joke about that? I think
there's some humor in the confession.
Oh yeah,
there's some humor in the confession scene that was pretty good. That's a good scene. I really like that scene. Actually,
I love that scene. Yeah, that was the best scene in the film.
But otherwise, it feels a little bit over serious and humorless. I think the kind of the new film. And in the same way, when both films are trying to do the same things, another thing which I think is interesting is that there is a bit of science in both films, but largely the science in Frankenstein, this year's movie, is all rubbish. It's kind of it's all largely wrong. I mean, that is not the function of the tricuspid valve. They just get it wrong. Whereas this lecture that Gene Wilder
get your facts right.
The lecture that Gene Wilder does at the beginning of Young Frankenstein is broadly legit, actually.
Yeah,
is it?
Yes.
So I
think the science is actually better in the Mel Brooks film.
Yeah. And not emphasized in the same way. I feel like there's so much emphasis on the technology in the laboratory and the science in Frankenstein, whereas I think Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder make a great choice just to kind of get that creature made. Don't worry too much about all the workings of it, because that's not the story. So
and they did the research.
Yeah. This is the same rule that the book follows as well, where it's not tremendously interested in the technical aspects. It just gets the creature made. So that's another win for Young Frankenstein, isn't it?
Yeah. On a very personal, opinionated note, I thought both films started really poorly. And I liked both of them as they get along. Like when you think about Young Frankenstein, there's that crazy the taking the box of money from the skeleton, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
That never pays off, really.
And it doesn't really pay off because they end up cutting out other scenes. But then it goes right into a fairly long story about the lecture that he's giving, that you just mentioned. Which is apparently quite informative and true, but it's a slow start, and it's you see his mania, but I don't think it's a great start to a film. And I don't think, in part because I don't think that was the intended full start. I think they've deleted scenes in such a way that it makes that scene, it makes it feel like it's just standing alone in an awkward way. I thought the first couple minutes of Frankenstein I really thought were terrible because it just looked to me to be a Marvel film. Yeah. With this, I thought he was going to pick up the whole boat and just throw it into the ocean or something, and it didn't look real. I think there's a lot of CGI, and in part I think it's because there's so much CGI in that film. You've got probably an enormous green screen. They've created this big boat, and it doesn't feel very real. And I thought it was just kind of ludicrous. Victor Frankenstein getting into the boat, and then the monster pouting and running around outside, and it gets trapped under ice and all that, and it felt like too big and too faked for me. But then I came to like the film more, which is probably better than a film getting bad towards the end as opposed to starting out poorly. So, but for me, they both started out kind of clunky and not that interesting, and fortunately, both films get much better.
I do have a quick question about that. That Frankenstein scene with the ice, which is that the monster, the creature, is buried under the ice, and then we see him like one fist punch up through the ice.
Yeah.
And then his second fist punches
Superman.
up through the ice as well. And I want to ask, what is he standing on now?
Yeah.
How can he use both hands? I don't understand what's going on.
You've got to tread water.
It really felt like a Superman moment, really, didn't it? The fist.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, that's what I thought of when he was pushing the boat out of the ice at the end too. Superman, absolutely.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It is.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's difficult to escape that kind of Marvel influence. I'm guessing we will see another 20 Frankenstein films over the next 20 or 30 years. It'll simply be made again and again and again. In part because the rights mean that it's a free for all. It's public domain, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's nothing to stop anybody making the story with great recognition. So we will see it again and again. I don't know whether we will see more relevant or more accomplished or somehow just like fresher versions than this Del Toro version next. I don't know what's coming.
I don't know either. Who knows?
My film. I'm going to make my film.
Yes.
Yeah, your film, exactly. Yeah, your film.
Yeah,
Much more to your take on Frankenstein.
Lorenzo's Frankenstein.
Hey, I like that title already.
Yeah, me too.
So stay tuned, listeners, for Lorenzo's Frankenstein. We have got just enough time to talk about what else has been playing at this theatre. Well, I in my usual lowbrow way, I went to see The Running Man this week. So you don't have to. It's the new Edgar Wright film, written by Edgar Wright with Michael Bacall. He was a writer on Scott Pilgrim and 21 Jump Street. And it is sadly really not very good, I'm afraid. It's like 60% of a good film. To the extent that I wonder if a good editor got their hands on it, it might.
I really like Edgar Wright.
This, I think, kind of it falls between two stools as well. I think if you gave it to a good editor, they might be able to turn it into a fairly good 80-minute film. But as it stands, it's just kind of it's muddled. So it's a do-over of the Schwarzenegger film from '87. It sticks much more closely to the original Stephen King book, which is, I think, one of the only Stephen King books that I have actually read. The problem is it just doesn't really quite know what it is. So sometimes it's really cheesy, sort of 80s type fun. Then it's trying to be like a dystopian satire, and then it spends a bit of a time as a Saturday Night Live sketch. So like the tone wobbles all over the place, and there are kind of story strands that mean nothing or go nowhere, and Glenn Powell is like the lead character.
I like
is just
Glenn
sort
Powell.
of angry all the time. He's just not very fun to watch.
Oh no.
There's basically to save you $12 or whatever. There is one good gag in The Running Man, which I will now ruin for you, which is that so Glenn Powell, he has to run away from the authorities for 30 days on this game show to win a lot of money.
Oh, that's right.
And at one point he is hanging off a building by a rope, which is wrapped around a giant letter Y, like a neon letter on the top of the building. And under his weight, the letter starts to fall over. And Glenn Powell, he looks up at this giant neon letter, realizing that he's about to fall off the building, and he says, "Why?" Anyway, that is the one good gag. That made me chuckle, but that is it in the film. Otherwise, bit of a miss, which is a shame. I don't know. I think people are trying very hard to make Glenn Powell happen, and I'm not really sure he will. I don't know. I hope you two have seen something a little bit more intelligent than me.
Well, sadly, you wanted to come across as very intelligent and highbrow. It's called After the Hunt, Luca Guadagnino's recent film, and I found it so pedantic and annoying and insufferable, really. Especially at the beginning. It does get better. It's about a college professor, Julia Roberts' character, who's a philosophy professor, I think, in Yale, and she finds herself at a crossroads when her star student, played by Ayo Edebiri, the girl from The Bear, who's a great actress, and so she suddenly accuses one of her colleagues, played by Andrew Garfield, of sexual assault or rape, and then like Julia Roberts, who's very good friends and has sort of a romantic attraction towards Andrew Garfield, so she has to decide which side she'll take, but there's sort of a dark secret from her own past that is threatening to be unveiled, but the screenplay is by this actress called Nora Garrett, and I felt like the screenplay is not very good at all. There's a lot of exposition, and in the beginning it's just like this whole conversation, a highbrow conversation about philosophy and life and who's clever and who's not, and these theses, and I felt like, when the characters are just so in love with themselves and actors loving being actors, and I just I couldn't bear it, honestly. And again, it does get better, but I don't know if many people would really watch past the first 20 minutes. I had to really force myself to carry on watching, and it's such a shame because it could have been really good. But even like the inciting incident, I didn't really believe, why the character, the motivation for her to look inside this cupboard. And I think the screenplay was pretty poor, which is a shame because I really like the director. I think he's a great director. But the script is not very good. I'm surprised, that all these actors went, and signed up for this, given the script. It's got Michael Stuhlbarg, who plays like Julia Roberts' husband, and Chloe Sevigny, who's quite good. But again, they're so underwritten. Again, it's a great premise, but just, not very well handled.
Isn't there a David Mamet script on basically the same subject? Yeah,
pretty much. Much better. Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
Okay, so it's brave to try and tackle a story that David Mamet does and say, I can do it better than him.
Yeah. Yeah, brave or just arrogant, I would say, and foolish.
Lorente, have you seen anything this week?
Just one thing other than our films. It's an American experience documentary film for public television here from, I think, 2003, 2005, 6, somewhere in there. It's called We Shall Remain After the Mayflower. So sort of part of my Thanksgiving dive into American history and what really happens to the American Indians after contact with the Europeans basically picks up right. It shows you the sort of the and it's well done. It's sort of a historical documentary, so they're reenacting stuff, but it's really well done. And just starts with the Thanksgiving meal and then how things go down and bad for the indigenous people right after that experience. So I saw it in part. My connection to this week's films would be Escaping One's Destiny. I have learned in the last few years that two of my distant relatives on my mother's side were infamous bastards in American history who just treated the indigenous very badly and were responsible for their deaths. And it's kind of ironic because my mother was just one of the nicest and most wonderful people.
The most wonderful. I know. I was just going to say, your mom was the most wonderful woman I've ever met. Honestly.
Her great grandfather, about 7 times over in the 1620s, was just a terrible human being, and it's well documented. And one of my cousins has been doing this research, so it just came to my attention in the last few years.
Wow.
And then another cousin told me about this other guy who, in the 1670s, was responsible for a massacre of American Indians, maybe 5-6 miles from here, where I am right now. So
great.
So it's just it's great to be enlightened and feel all woke and just trying to escape my destiny from my ancestors.
So I presume you're on the cusp of doing a Frankenstein and changing the way you pronounce your name to dissociate yourself.
That's it. Yeah, I don't know. It's not the Lorente side. It's it's really the Kimball and Tramer side. So how would I change? No, it's the Kimball side. So I would say I'm not a Kimball. I'm a Kimball.
On Instagram, we are at 2 Real Cinema Club. Read the blog at 2realcinemaclub.com. Comment on the YouTube channel or email us at 2realcinemaclub.com. Next week we will be at the popcorn counter talking about, I'm not entirely sure what we'll talk about, but we'll figure something out. We will be back with 2 more movies in 2 weeks. Thank you as always for joining us. Final thoughts on Frankenstein? It's on Netflix. You can watch it for free if you already pay your $15 a month or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Worth 2.5 hours, do you think?
I took 2 nights to watch it, so not 2.5 consecutive hours, but break it up. Break it up into 5 acts. Watch 1 act each night.
Watch 1 act a night. Inês Braga, thank you as always for bringing your fine intelligence and insightful commentary to our otherwise slightly dumb-headed podcast. Please join us in the Popcorn Counter next week.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure.
Goodbye, everyone.
My pleasure. Bye.